Hey Edgar, what do you think? Would people prefer the real deal information on how to retain information quickly? Or do they just want more of the corporate-y garbage that tells them you can just pour it in your ear and remember it forever? Oh, come on now, Dr. Metivier. You know how the world works. People don't want information. They just want magic pills. Exactly! And that's how I, the evil Dr. Forget, gets them every single time. It is indeed a hard battle, Edgar, even if they laugh at us and spit in our face. But we will continue to fight the evil Dr. Forget and show people how to retain information quickly with these incredible tips.
All the stuff he hasn't learned yet. It's Edgar versus the evil Dr. Forget.
It comes down to one incredibly powerful term: strategic repetition. Repetition, the thing that we think, well, isn't that what we want to avoid by using memory techniques? Not necessarily. What we want to do is certainly reduce the amount of unhealthy repetition, the kind of rote learning, which I've shown you before, reduces critical thinking, and we want to maximize creative repetition so that we can reduce the amount of times that we need to review things, but not to eliminate review altogether. Isn't it the case that we commit information to memory and retain it over the long term precisely so that we can repeat it? Why would we ever memorize anything that we didn't want to be able to repeat on demand? Memorization is repetition at its core, so we don't want to avoid repetition. We want to maximize its power so that we can use it at our whim. But hang on! You say that you can use memory techniques and never have to repeat information ever at all! No, Dr. Forget. That is not what I say. You seem to have forgotten that strategic repetition... Don't question my memory. I've heard you talk about using a memory palace just once to remember information permanently without any repetition. You're contradicting yourself. No, Dr. Forget, I am not contradicting myself. You need to be a little bit more like Edgar the elephant, who focuses on the fundamentals so he can pay attention to the nuances and really understand what works when it comes to learning faster and retaining more so that you can accomplish your goals, get that raise, get a job, finally scratch that language off your bucket list, and live as your highest possible self. And the reason people can't retain information is not IQ, it's not genetics, it's not even laziness. Often it's that they simply aren't paying attention to the information in the first place, and if they are paying attention to it, they're not using what scientists call elaborative encoding. So what's elaborative encoding? It is the power of memory techniques at a refined level, and when you get this, you'll be able to remember information a lot faster and hang on to it for as long as you want. And it starts with exaggeration. What's that, Edgar? Oh, you're right. I better explain that before we get into this example. Your information might not be like this information, yet at the same time it is. One of the number one things that people say to me is, well, I'm studying physics and I can't figure out how this works for physics, or I'm studying biology and this, that, and the other thing. And the reality is, if you study memory techniques, you'll see how everything snaps on to everything else. So let me tell you, I was at an event and I had a name come up, Gangador Dianand. Now that's not exactly like physics, is it? But yet at the same time, it is, because all I have in that moment is mere seconds to come up with an association that I remember. And if it were a physical formula, it'd be the same process, even though I might use a different system. So, in order to make sure that you have access to the highest possible level of all the systems that you're going to want to develop in order to retain information as quickly as possible, make sure you hit that thumbs up, get subscribed if you're new here, and consider at least starting with my free course at magneticmemorymethod.com. Just go to the main site and get started there, and we'll talk about these different systems. We can't cover them all in today's video, but they're covered on this channel as well, broadly speaking. But for people who are savvy and want to save time, that free course will give you that broad overview and help you develop some of those systems from the get-go so you have them. Now, Gangador Dianand. The first system that I used there is called a memory palace. We'll get into that in a second. But the first thing that I did was grab that information and then associate it and exaggerate it. And how? I noticed the alphabetical structure of the name, Gangador Dianand. And I just start to make associations. So a gang makes me think of NWA in mere seconds. Now there's a little bit of training behind this, but I've had practice. You can get that practice too very quickly. Gangador Dianand, NWA. So there's the association. Now to exaggerate it, I look at the second part of the name, door. So the gang, in an exaggerated way, bang, 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 on the door, Gangador. Now Dianand, Diana, Princess Diana, and with an ampersand, which is the symbol for and. Now, here's where we can get into where physics might come in, if that's your topic. And is a symbol. Maybe it's not a symbol in physics, but there are many symbols in physics. They have names, and in this case, the symbol for and is called ampersand. And if I needed to memorize that, which I didn't need to do when I was remembering this name using Princess Diana with an ampersand, but if I had needed to, I would use the same process. Okay, so this symbol is called ampersand. So I'm going to imagine through association a Marshall amplifier with the and symbol in the letter A of Marshall, and it is sinking in sand, ampersand. And you know that per part, maybe it's going to get lost in the mix the first time, but I can try and figure out on the second pass what needs to be there, so I memorize that name. And whatever symbol might come up, so long as I can figure out its name, I can incorporate it in an association and then exaggerate it. And so let's exaggerate ampersand. We have the amp sinking in sand. Maybe we get Nigel Tufnell from Spinal Tap, I think the movie was called. And he has that amplifier that turns up to 11. So all I need to do now is have him screaming in my mind. I'm exaggerating this association and saying, and this ampersand is sinking in the sand. And so now I'm getting another level and layer of association and exaggerating it. That level and layer is now there's this visual idea of the amp sinking into the sand, but also the sound. Now back to Gangador Dianand. I already knew what an ampersand was, but I have the gang banging on the door with Princess Diana battling an ampersand, which is the symbol for and. Gangador Dianand. In order to make this scale, you're going to want to use a memory palace. A memory palace is a mental representation of a familiar location, like this room. And so in the name demonstration, one way that I just quickly turn that room into a memory palace is to use the bodies of the individuals where they are when I hear their names. And then when I'm doing the demonstration that I can recall all their names, I just think back to the associations and I usually place them on their shoulders. But if I were learning a bunch of chemical equations or foreign language vocabulary or even entire phrases, I would strategically use a memory palace that was built out in advance, and I would follow a number of principles that I teach in the free course at my site. To that end, when it comes to remembering information strategically, you don't want to wait for the test that you need to pass. You want to test yourself strategically. So while I wait for exams, and this is as true of when I got my permission to stay in Germany for the long term as it is when I did level 3 in Mandarin, I didn't wait for the test. I tested myself. Now for Mandarin, I used formal memory palaces, and here's one right now. And it's just a simple drawing that I made of the classroom itself, and inside I have some index cards that I used which have drawings on them, and the drawings have no answers on the back because I wanted to test myself using the rules of personalization and variety. And so this word for career is on station 1 of the memory palace, and to test myself, I just simply got out an independent piece of paper, wrote out all the words that I memorized, not looking at the cards, thinking of the cards as the drawings that I made on the individual memory palace stations, and I just tested myself. And lo and behold, I went to that exam and I passed it. I only had one word that I got wrong. And you know what? I forgave myself because I'm getting on in my middle age, and it was also 6 p.m. in the evening that the exam started, and it was very, very intense. So this is a powerful, powerful way to retain information, but you don't want to just encode the information. You want to test yourself, and that's one way that you do it, is you put the things together, you memorize them in space, and then you put this aside, you test yourself, and then you compare it against the record to see how well you did. How much do you want to bet he's going to forget to talk about reading skills and memory. Now, speaking about the science around rote repetition versus these kinds of elaborative encoding through association and exaggeration techniques, what was I going to talk about next? Oh, that's right. Reading so you can retain facts and information. We've got some beautiful tactics around that, don't we, Dr. Forget? One of the things I used to struggle with so bad was coming across charts and diagrams, and it just used to boggle my mind. I'm not really a visual person, and I used to find them really, really overwhelming. But a little trick that I discovered was something I learned from Tony Buzan. See, Tony has this thing called the most important graph in the world that he used to teach. And because it truly is so important, the way he would get you to remember it was to have you draw it in your own hand. And I remember it to this day, even though I only ever drew it once. So putting 2 and 2 together, what I started to do when I came across these charts and diagrams that used to overwhelm me visually is I just started drawing them in my own hand, and in the drawing process I would start to analyze what it was that I was putting together, and that would reduce the overwhelm. And as a result, I no longer have to do it nearly as much in order to figure out what was going on. So if you understand them at a glance, and that's good for you, I mean, congratulations. But if you're struggling with that like I used to, that's a wonderful and powerful way to help you with the comprehension of them. And then you can use the same techniques in terms of using mnemonic images to help you remember them. And for that, you might have a lot of numbers going on. So I would highly recommend that you learn a number encoding system to help you out. And I've talked about those on the channel before, but one thing you might want to do is get into the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass so that you can learn the number systems that I teach there that help you rapidly absorb any number, any symbol in your mind so that you can lay them out in memory palaces and then use the memory palaces to get those numbers and symbols and formulas into long-term memory as quickly as possible. Back when I was in graduate school, I had an amazing professor named Katie Anderson. We did a course together, and then we did a directed reading course together. And in the directed reading course, which is essentially where you work one-on-one with a professor, you get the same amount of credits as you would from a traditional course with other students in it, but you're just essentially reading a list of books and then writing an essay. But she took things to the next level, and I'm very grateful that she did, because she required me to write a summary of each and everything that I read in that course. And I read a wide variety of books and articles, and it didn't matter whether it was a full book or an article. She wanted a summary and a written one, and it usually was 250 to 500 words, and sometimes I would write a little bit more than that. And basically, this helped me remember more from that class than many of my other classes where I didn't write any summaries at all. I just wrote an essay at the end. And this was a tremendous gift, and I took this as a habit that I continue to do. Now, a lot of people, they'll say, yes, Anthony, we've read your Magnetic Memory Method blog, and we can see you're writing about the books that you're reading all the time, but I don't have a blog to write. You don't need one. All you need really is an index card for each book that you read. And it might not even be 250 words that you squeeze on there, but what you're doing is you're essentially just helping your brain see the information that you remember in another form, and you're just processing it, percolating it through your brain in your own words. Now you can take this to more advanced and strategic levels, and that's one thing that we talk about in my Read with Momentum program. So if you'd like to be in the next cohort, make sure you let me know. One of the easiest ways to do that is just go to magneticmerrymethod.com/RWM for Read with Momentum, and we have such a blast in that program, and I hope we'll see you in one soon as we go deeper and deeper into how that you can extract information from books very, very quickly and then distribute that information throughout memory palace networks and get it into long-term memory very, very quickly. But at the end of the day, if you would just start writing summaries of videos, summaries of podcasts, you'll cause yourself to start to encode the information in different levels of your brain, which means you'll retain it much, much longer. And along those lines, one thing that we often do to ourselves is we starve our mouths of getting involved in the action. So Dr. Forget, he's always got something to say, but he isn't saying anything useful. He's the force that's constantly trying to distract you with some new ad or what have you, and this is not good. What you need instead is to be talking about the information that you want to retain. So one of the things that you do is you find some people who will be willing to listen to what you have to say, so you can practice getting the information through the muscles of your mouth, which will help you retain it longer. And so let's say you're learning a language. Well, obviously you've got speaking partners, but what I used to do when I was living with roommates is whatever language I was studying at that time, I would just say, hey, I just learned this crazy phrase, or I would sing them a song in the language that I was learning, just as an extra layer of getting that information into my memory. And it really is no skin off their back. They don't mind. I'm just like, oh, and I would tell them how that I memorized it, which is another way that you learn memory techniques better, is you explain how you're doing the memory tricks. And that's another way of getting it through your mouth. So make sure you're talking to other people about what you're learning. And you can also type, but it's not the same as speaking it, because speaking also gets you to hear yourself, and you refine your abilities to actually explain things, so you explain it to others and yourself in a way that constantly improves at the same time. It's very, very powerful. And if you struggle with that, I mean, there's got to be channels about how that you can make friends and all that sort of stuff, or get involved in groups. Just put some time into making sure that you have enough verbal exchanges with people specifically about the things that you're learning, so that you'll be able to retain it better over the long term. And push comes to shove, do what I do. I talk to myself. I talk to myself silently as I walk around, but I also like to talk out loud, like when I'm in the shower, or often when I'm in this room planning things. I will just say out loud what it is that I'm thinking, and if I want to remember things, like I'm writing a new book now, and when I want to remember things, I actually verbalize it, and it helps me retain better without having to go to the extent of sticking things in a memory palace, which I sometimes also do. But just getting it through the mouth already makes that information much more retainable. Along those lines, meditation is proven time and time again to help give you boosts in memory. Now, there's a bit of a catch, because not everybody will meditate, not everybody likes meditation, but there is such a thing as meditations. So it doesn't have to be sitting in a room or just chanting, humming, hawing, all that sort of stuff. You can do walking meditation, you can do yoga, you can do laying in bed forms of meditation and so forth. But doing some kind of thing where you're studying the nature of consciousness has been shown, and I've experienced it personally and seen many, many others tell me that it helped them. It will improve your ability to remember. And I believe that one of the reasons why that it does so is simply because it improves your ability to pay attention to information as it comes in. So don't write off meditation. There's lots and lots of different things that are meditative that you can do. And I'll never forget Nelson Dellis telling me, after he reviewed or gave a blurb for The Victorious Mind, that he always thought that training your memory was a kind of meditation, and I totally agree. So one of the things you do is just get into mnemonics, the kind of mnemonics we talk about on this channel, and maybe memorize a deck of cards every once in a while, and try and make sure that it's 4 times a week rather than once in a while. But you can start with once in a while, dip your toes in it. And the more that you accelerate towards regular practice, the more you're going to get those contemplative, meditative effects, even if it is memorizing a deck of cards. And the research shows that 4 times a week is the bare minimum in order to get these memory benefits. But I think that you'll get benefits a lot better, a lot faster, if you just explore and experiment with different ways of doing it. So meditation, I'm a big proponent of it, but I realize that there are different types of people and so forth. Just think about it and try to rotate different experiments in different kinds of meditations until you find something that just clicks. And I'm sure you'll benefit in many, many ways as you explore. In a book called When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, Daniel Pink reveals his findings from over 700 scientific articles. And in those findings, only 15% of people found that they were morning people who got going and kept going by making sure they arranged their routines to be morning oriented. And I found this really, really compelling, because I've seen shifts in my life. Sometimes I really, really get a benefit from the conquer the morning, conquer the day mentality, and it really, really works. And it is my general preferred discipline. But just looking at the data, 15% of people are morning people and get a benefit from that, you've got to do some exploration yourself. So explore timing in different ways, and I know you'll benefit. It can be that you just need to experiment. Now, I have found that I like to sometimes shift things and I get more benefits from different times. So sometimes I need to go back to mornings for particular things, but it's sometimes the case that I have periods where it needs to be in the evening, whatever that technique or that strategy is that I'm trying to work on. Another thing, if you look more into the science of timing, there's different things that work for different people, such as starting a learning task on a Monday or on the first day of the month. And I don't know why exactly it works, but they do find that this works for some people. It's just the way that it is. You can't know whether it's going to work for you or not unless you run the experiments for yourself. This is called N=1 experimentation, and it's the most powerful form of science that there is. Now, how exactly are you going to do this process of experimentation? Well, I like to use journals, and sometimes I have memory palace journals for my memory palaces. Sometimes I have base journals for my base learning practice. And, I use this word journal. What I really just mean is a notebook with paper inside of it, bound by a cover. And I often like to decorate them, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just am in a hurry and stick the word base on it in this particular case. And what I'm tracking in here, well, that's between me and my journal. But at the end of the day, it comes down to times of day that I've practiced and any observations that I have around optimizing that process. And then sometimes I will track images that I've used to help me memorize passages in different songs. And you can turn the fretboard into a memory palace or what have you, and just use some of those number techniques in order to remember how different licks go in different songs, different passages, and it's very, very powerful. But the point is to keep track of that stuff, ideally with your hand. Sometimes Excel files can be very, very useful as well. It's up to you to explore. A lot of people, they read about memory journaling in The Victorious Mind, and they say, please give me the exact steps of how to do it. I don't believe that there are exact steps. There are many, many books you can read about journaling, but I recommend that you just experiment. And one way to experiment is just to simply track your times of day and then make observations and then do more of what you observe to work better and do less of what you observe to not be working quite so well. But don't abandon it entirely. Whatever doesn't work on Tuesday might work on Thursday if you just rotate the times. Now, I will try to trick him to tell you which of these techniques is the simplest and the easiest and the best. No, Dr. Forget. No, and 1,000 times no. It's not about the simplest, it's not about the easiest, and it's certainly not about the best. If there is the best, it is the set of techniques that you use, that you explore, and that you explore consistently and in a way where you track the results so that you can observe scientifically as possible what's going on and how exactly it's contributing with as much weight as you can possibly give it to the accurate things that are working, and get rid of the things that aren't working without getting rid of them entirely. Just like we don't get rid of you entirely, even though we could melt you, because forgetting is made of snow, and that is part of the magnetic memory method philosophy, is that we can reduce forgetting to the bare minimum if we just learn not one technique, but a series of techniques, and have as many of them in our toolbox as possible. And the favorite technique of mine that never gets talked about enough is mind mapping. So if you're interested in more ways that will help you retain, including ways to turn mind maps into memory palaces so that you can place associations in two places at once, on the mind map and in a memory palace, watch our video. Well, not your video. Get out of here, Dr. Forget. Our video with Edgar here and all our other magnetic friends. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thanks for those thumbs up. Thanks for your wonderful comments below. Watch the video on mind map tactics next. I know you're going to love it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the results that you enjoy. And until then, thanks again, and keep yourself magnetic.
This episode of Edgar vs. the Evil Dr. Forget is brought to you by MagneticMemoryMethod.com, where we help mature learners take mental adventures that make learning easy, effective, and fun. Get Dr. Metivier's free memory improvement kit and course at MagneticMemoryMethod.com/Edgar. Link in the description below.